Hi guys, Lena here, coming to you from tomorrow in Australia. And here we are barreling towards the unmitigated hell that is January 2025. Still room for lots of twists in the tale. But can you believe it? So the muskrat, having bought the pregnancy, slip, there's bound to be another Elon baby. That would be presidency. Having bought the presidency, it's now being mooted that he could become Speaker of the House. Because we all know Johnson's gone. It's beyond belief, but we'll be looking at that. In the meantime, I've been looking up some stats on the products that Canada sells to the US, which includes 4 million barrels of oil a day, and potash and uranium and all sorts of things. So my first question today is, will these absolutely brutal tariffs be instigated, or is he just blowing gas? So let's have a look at the tariffs. Stunning. Now, how are you guys bearing up as it gets closer to Christmas? Many of you are fortunate you're not culturally forced to acknowledge Christmas or even celebrate it in any way. I'm a little bit jealous. Never been a fan of Christmas. Call me a cynical old bag. Let's go with these tariffs. Oh. Well, okay. Now, the first card, the death card. Now, I'm using the One World Tarot deck, which is a deck I designed with Sienna Rose. And our little giggle when we came to the death card that traditionally has the figure being trampled by the Grim Reaper has more than a passing resemblance to you know who. Right. So his very first card is the death card. But context, is it the death of his influence, or is it the death of the tariffs, or death? What does it mean? What death does mean is the end of one cycle of doing things in a particular way and a brand new major cycle coming forward. He's the master of misinformation. Here we go. And then we have the sun, which is usually a very positive card. And in this case, it could also mean reason prevails. Here he is on his stone throne, the Yeti, right? And this is the card for me of the best of America. So if I put these together, I think big business will actually come and lobby. They don't have to convince him because he hasn't got a brain you could work with. They could use the adult brain of the muskrat and make him realize, oh, I'm not good for business. Duh, duh. And there could be some sanity prevailing here before it gets to the absolute worst case scenario. And did you see today the Yeti was bored and decided he might invade Panama? Don't mention the names of any other countries in a 20-yard radius of the Yeti because he'll want to invade it. The Pentagon's going to have a major role going forward, and that deserves its own video. How much will they comply with this imbecilic, cretinous, vicious bastard? Okay, so moving on. So we all have to hold our breath and see what happens with the tariffs. Um, what I wanted to talk about here was major things get washed over with so much news in any news cycle. And meanwhile, California is in a state of emergency over bird flu. Do you remember back? My sense is around 2000, the shift of the millennium and stuff. Um, Bird flu was fully freaky. Everyone was freaking out about bird flu. Now, because so many of the populations in different countries has been convinced science doesn't matter, they'll pay a big price for that. Bird flu. Apparently, it's already in 865 dairies. Now, I'm the daughter of a dairy farmer. We also had sugarcane. My dad used to cut sugarcane by hand with a machete. That's how long ago it was, before all the big harvesters. So I feel very strongly about this. Okay, let's have a look. What's happening with bird flu? Should we be worried or not? Bird flu. Okay. This is all about money. Why should I be surprised? Why does it always, doesn't matter what your topic, choose a topic, always comes back to money. I don't think we're hearing how bad it really is. I think the ag department and stuff doesn't want people to panic. They're keeping the statistics close to their chest. Big money is involved, right? The Ace of Swords here is a new approach, a new way of thinking, a new way of looking at it. I think they'll be trying to find a new way to suppress the outbreak. But with these next two cards, I'm not so confident they will. Nine of Pentacles. This is someone who's in a position with plenty of money. This is also plenty of money, but in a different way. The lifestyle of people are so used to being able to depend on agriculture for whatever it is you want turning up magically in a supermarket. Okay, oh, starting to rain here. They will have to sit down and work with people. Now, because money is a priority in this, it concerns me because people will keep doing what they're doing until there's something legal. Where's my legal card? To stop them. And we're going to see greater deregulation. So not only are the cows themselves, not like in my day where they were roaming around, you'd have to round them up on horses. No, they're all in really tight, compressed, inhumane conditions. And that means diseases become much more common. Expect this with chickens and eggs as well. Hello. And also the farm workers, those ones that the Yeti wants to get rid of, who are doing the hard yakka, as we say in Australia, that hard yakka is hard work. They're living in overcrowded conditions, which also mean if there is a leap to humans, it's more likely to happen in unsanitary circumstances. So it's all sort of coming together. So be very careful, pay attention to what we hear about this going forward. Right. Now, before I go on, a few bits of news. Okay. Another CEO of a health insurance company has resigned off his own bat. Why? His story is he comes from Virginia and he went back to Virginia. He's now the cashed up CEO and he goes back to visit his family in Virginia. And you know what he saw? This might not shock you, but for an Australian, or in fact anyone else in a first world country, I found this staggering. He arrives back in Virginia and he sees these people queued for miles out of sight, queues and queues of people into a fairground. And he goes, "What's going on?" And the locals say, "We've got a 3-day free clinic for health." So people were coming because they can't afford normal healthcare because they're Americans, don't go there, and poor Americans. So they wait for these 3-day free clinics. The doctors were seeing people in animal stalls. I'll let that sink in. But he had the grace to go, "There's something really wrong with what I'm doing." Okay. Oh, and another thing I want to talk about while on that theme, 5 million children have now lost Medicare because I think this was part of the COVID extensions of Medicare. Excuse me. So a lot more people were covered and now they're being cut off. 5 million children are now without health care. That is shocking, absolutely shocking. Okay, so let's move on now to the muskrat. And isn't it an amazing coincidence that his brother Kimball bought a fleet of drones in 2022, 9,000 drones. Okay, all right. Now, before I get into this, something you should catch is I think a lot of the podcasters are really, they were doing a good job anyway, but they've really stepped up. I'm talking about Midas Touch, Legal AF, Adam Mockler, David Packman. They're committed. And I guess we as political tarot readers are on the fringe of that. But this is where people need to go for their news in the future, is these podcasters who research their material and who are responsible. This is the future. The legacy channels and papers are officially over, you know? So here we go. Talk of the muskrat becoming speaker. Now, this was a question sent to me in the comments by a viewer, and my first reaction was, no, it's not a sexy enough title for our Elon. No, oh, I don't think so. Sitting through all those meetings, no. And I sort of brushed it. And lo and behold, other people are talking about it. I can't actually believe it. Cannot believe it. So we've got to have a look. Will the muskrat become speaker? Bear in mind, this is the energy today. Things can change in a few weeks, but let's have a look. And then I'll read some cards for you. Let's have a look here for the muskrat. Speaker. The challenge. Okay. Trump's the outcome card. Not so happy about that, I have to say. Now, the very first card, this is traditionally moving away to a safer place. Could it be that some semblance of civic duty remains with what's left of the GOP? Because we know Marjorie Taylor Greene and a few others of the maniacs who should not be allowed out of their homes unsupervised, let's face it. maybe this is the GOP steering it away from this hideous idea. The obstacle, it could be if he decides, because he now rules the states and let's face it, rules the world. I mean, it's a terrifying concept. He could just steal it outright, just do it. This could be a quintessential moment in modern history. However, this is temperance thing, everything that's reasonable and balanced is underneath it. Okay, Ace of Pentacles, they're going to have to come up with a new idea to get around this. I hope, I don't have a lot of faith, and I'm sure none of you do, in this current GOP. And sorry, I digress. Don't you? You see headlines now. Mitch McConnell goes to war against Trump. Mitch McConnell trying to do this. Mitch McConnell, who is single-handedly responsible. Well, not single-handedly, Merrick Garland. Mitch McConnell did everything within the mechanics of politics to bring us to this point. Merrick Garland, I think, has to wear the historic responsibility of failing, with a capital F, on sorting out the leaders of the insurrection. They were happy to send the boots to jail, but not the suits. They have to come up with a new answer. They are strategizing around this, but Trump's going to weigh in, right? So at this point, I think there's going to be resistance, but we have to keep our eye on this story. It could be like when I grew up in the most conservative state in Australia. It was known as the Deep North, okay, as a play on the Deep South. And it was a police state for over 20 years. Excuse me. And we had this one Trump guy who was the premier of that state. This man could not put a sentence together, didn't matter. People loved him. He talked absolute rubbish at all points of the day and night. People were welded onto this man. He wanted to separate from the rest of Australia. Every 2 years, he'd come out with this ridiculous idea. They'd love him more and more and more. My point is, you can't underestimate stupid and selfish, right? You just mustn't underestimate it. But eventually, and he was corrupt for 20 years. And finally, it was the corruption that brought him undone, because what was left of the legal system, which he had a great hand in manipulating for 20 years, finally, enough of the legal eagles got there in the end. And I think that's an apocryphal story. So, never give up. Okay, now, you guys, how to cope going forward. It's really important because it's tempting on one level to just detach completely. And that's not healthy for democracy, because as people do that, it's ice melting in a glass. So it's really essential to stay engaged, but protect your heart, protect your sanity, protect your psyche. You know, you've got to really, really look after yourself now, you know. So let's have a look. Advice for you guys. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Oh, thank goodness for that. Okay, so this is interesting. Biden comes out first. This is my King of Cups card. So there may well be excuse me, another twist in the tail, if not another 27 twists in the tail between now. Oh, I've got the hiccup, sorry, end of January. But there's something here about what his energy represents. And it could be that part of what we're all facing is we're being dragged through a sewer of toxic masculinity, generally speaking, globally. And he represents a compassionate man. And remember when Waltz first came into our lounge rooms, and it was so refreshing with his disabled son to see such a compassionate man who was also a no-nonsense type and an educator and everything good. So that's another video, the masculinity issues, but it's turned up there for you to remind you. As things are happening really quickly, as they are, I genuinely believe we're in a compressed and accelerated time sphere at the moment. It's like everything's just incoming, incoming. Do not let it take your power away. The Eight of Swords, this figure, in case you haven't heard this before in another previous 100 readings, this figure feels she has no power. She feels she's bound up. She can't see the light, surrounded by swords. Okay, but here's the water representing compassion and goodness and your intuitive well-being and all of that. If she can tap into the water, she can get out of the bonds. This is really, really an important card. Do not let them do it. This is your self-imposed reaction, very understandable. God knows I'm having my issues, because I'm so close to all this. So we have to remember not to let it make you feel like this. No, that's what they're banking on. And look, the sun. Hold the light. Hold the light. Okay, the sun will rise. It's okay. All right, guys, speak to me in the comments. You take care. Bye for now. Ciao.